What if I told you that the very thing you're trying to escape is actually the key to your freedom? Think about it. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's probably something gnawing at you. Some uncertainty, some decision you're avoiding, some path you're afraid to take. That feeling? That uncomfortable churning sensation in your chest? That's not your enemy. That's your compass. If this idea already has you thinking differently, hit that like button. And if you want more life-changing insights like this, subscribe and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let me take you back to 1813, Copenhagen, Denmark. A wealthy merchant's home where 7 children play in the halls. But this isn't a fairy tale. This is the beginning of a story that would shake the foundations of how we understand human existence. The youngest of these children would grow up to become Soren Kierkegaard, a name you might struggle to pronounce, but ideas you can't afford to ignore. Picture this. By the time Kierkegaard turned 22, 5 of his 6 siblings were dead. Gone, just like that. Imagine waking up every morning with that reality. Death isn't some distant concept when you're surrounded by empty chairs at the dinner table. It's breathing down your neck. But here's what's fascinating about Kierkegaard. Instead of breaking under this weight, he did something extraordinary. He began to write, and write, and write some more. He wrote with the fury of a man who knew time was running out, which it was. He died at 42, likely from spinal tuberculosis. But in those short years, he produced ideas that would echo through centuries. Ideas about you, about me, about the fundamental nature of what it means to be human. Now, let's fast forward to young Kierkegaard at the University of Copenhagen. Here's a brilliant mind, surrounded by the finest philosophical and theological works of his time. And what does he do? He gets bored, frustrated, angry even. What I really need to do, he wrote, is to get clear about what am I to do, not what I must know. Think about that for a second. Here's a guy with access to all the intellectual treasures of his era, and he's saying, "This isn't helping me live." Sound familiar? How many of us have felt this way? Surrounded by information, yet starving for wisdom. Drowning in data, yet desperate for direction. Kierkegaard saw through the academic game. He realized that life isn't lived in libraries. It's lived in the messy, uncertain, terrifying reality of everyday existence. And that's where his revolutionary idea was born. Kierkegaard called it angst. Not the teenager listening to dark music kind of angst. Something much deeper, much more universal. He described it as the anxiety that comes from being human. Not anxiety disorder, not panic attacks, but the fundamental unease that comes from being conscious creatures in an uncertain world. Here's how he put it. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Let that sink in. The dizziness of freedom. Right now, you have choices. Infinite choices. You could quit your job tomorrow. You could move to another country. You could call that person you've been thinking about. You could start that project you've been putting off. But with all those choices comes a terrifying realization. You're responsible for what happens next. And here's the kicker. You don't have enough information to make the right choice. You never will. Imagine you're driving through life, but the vehicle is bizarre. You have a steering wheel, sure, a dashboard full of dials, even a kill switch. But no brake, no accelerator, no reverse gear, no map, no Jeeps, and the world. It's covered in thick fog. Everywhere you look, fog. You hope that if you choose the right direction, the fog will clear. But it never does. Not completely. This is the human condition, according to Kierkegaard. We're always at the intersection of past and future, forced to navigate without a clear view of where we're going. Is it any wonder we feel anxious? But here's where most people get Kierkegaard wrong. They think he was pessimistic. They think he was saying life is meaningless and we should just accept our suffering. Dead wrong. Kierkegaard believed anxiety was necessary, essential even. Without anxiety, there would be no possibility. And without possibility, there would be no growth, no meaning, no authentic self. Think about it. When do you feel most alive? When you're comfortable and certain? Or when you're on the edge of something new, something unknown? That flutter in your stomach before a first date. That racing heart before a big presentation. That sleepless night before starting a new job. That's not weakness. That's life calling to you. But here's the crucial part, and this is where most people fail. The anxiety isn't going away. Ever. Your head will never stop spinning completely. So what do? You learn to walk while dizzy. You learn to act despite the uncertainty. You learn to move forward, even when you can't see the next step clearly. Here's the trap most of us fall into. We think we need to figure everything out before we act. We think we need to eliminate the anxiety before we make the move. So we wait, and wait, and wait some more. We tell ourselves we're being responsible, we're being smart, we're being prepared. But really, we're being paralyzed. Kierkegaard saw this everywhere. People frozen by the very freedom they claimed to want. Unable to choose because they were overwhelmed by choice. It's like having a massive to-do list and being so intimidated by it that you do nothing. Except, this isn't just any to-do list. This is your life. With a deadline you don't know, and consequences you can't escape. No wonder we feel overwhelmed. But here's what Kierkegaard discovered. The goal isn't to make perfect decisions. The goal is to make decisions that are true to who you are. He called this subjective truth. Not truth that can be proven in a laboratory. Not truth that everyone agrees on. But truth that resonates in your bones. The crucial thing is to find a truth which is truth for me, he wrote. To find the idea for which I am willing to live and die. This isn't about being selfish or ignoring reality. This is about recognizing that your life has to be lived by you. Not by your parents, not by your friends, not by society's expectations. By you. Kierkegaard introduced another concept that's been misunderstood for generations: the leap of faith. People think this means believing in something without any evidence, but that's not what Kierkegaard meant at all. He meant committing to something despite uncertainty, acting on your deepest convictions, even when you can't prove they're right. It's the difference between intellectual certainty and existential commitment. You don't need to know for certain that your relationship will work out to commit to it. You don't need to guarantee success to start that business. You don't need to eliminate all risk to pursue your passion. You just need to care enough to try. Of course, most people don't want to hear this. It's easier to avoid the anxiety than to face it. So we become escape artists, masters of distraction. We conform to avoid the responsibility of choosing. We tell ourselves that if we just do what everyone else is doing, we can't be wrong. We chase distractions, social media, entertainment, shopping, substances, status symbols, anything to avoid sitting with the uncomfortable truth that we're responsible for our own lives. We become what Kierkegaard called the crowd, anonymous, safe, and ultimately empty. But there's a cost to this avoidance. Kierkegaard called it despair, not just sadness, but a deeper kind of spiritual emptiness. It's the feeling of being lost in your own life, of going through the motions without really living, of reaching the end and realizing you never became who you were meant to be. Modern psychoanalyst James Hollis put it perfectly. Anxiety is the price of the ticket to life. Depression is the byproduct of the refusal to climb aboard. Think about that. You can pay the price of anxiety and get a life worth living. Or you can avoid the anxiety and pay the much higher price of depression and regret. Which sounds like a better deal. Here's what makes this even more relevant today. We have more choices than Kierkegaard could have imagined. More opportunities. More possibilities. More paths to explore. And guess what? More anxiety. We're drowning in options. Career paths that didn't exist 10 years ago. Lifestyle choices that would have been unthinkable to previous generations. Relationships that can be formed and ended with a swipe. The modern world has given us unprecedented freedom. And with that freedom comes unprecedented anxiety. No wonder we're seeing anxiety rates skyrocket. No wonder people are more paralyzed than ever. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. The answer isn't to eliminate the anxiety. The answer is to learn to deal with it. Maybe it's time we stopped seeing anxiety as a disorder and started seeing it as a feature of consciousness itself. Kierkegaard suggested we might be called Homo anxietatem, anxious man. Because how could we not be anxious? We're conscious creatures in an uncertain world, aware of our mortality, responsible for our choices, and equipped with imagination enough to envision countless possibilities. Of course we're anxious. It would be strange if we weren't. The question isn't how to eliminate anxiety. The question is how to live with it productively. So how do we do it? How do we live with anxiety instead of being paralyzed by it? First, we stop waiting for certainty. It's not coming. Life will never become more sturdy or less scary. There will never be a perfect time to take that leap. Second, we choose our anxiety. Because you're going to be anxious anyway. The question is whether you're anxious about meaningful things or meaningless things. Would you rather be anxious about pursuing your dreams or anxious about not pursuing them? Would you rather be anxious about taking risks or anxious about playing it safe? The anxiety is inevitable. The direction is up to you. Kierkegaard believed the key was to find what he called passion. Not just any passion, but the passion that feels true to who you are. It could be love. It could be creativity. It could be family, personal growth, a career, an ideology, a belief system. What matters is that it's yours, not borrowed from someone else, not imposed by society, but discovered through your own experience, your own struggle, your own journey through anxiety. And then, you throw the full weight of your being in that direction. You commit completely, despite the uncertainty. You take the leap of faith. Here's the beautiful paradox Kierkegaard discovered. The very thing we're trying to escape is the thing that makes us human. Anxiety isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. It's the price we pay for consciousness, for freedom, for the ability to become something more than we are. Without anxiety, we'd be like animals, driven by instinct, living in the present moment, unaware of possibility. But we're not animals. We're humans. And that means we get to experience both the terror and the wonder of not knowing what comes next. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. This isn't easy. Living with anxiety, making decisions without certainty, taking leaps of faith, it's hard work. But consider the alternative. A life of avoidance, a life of conformity, a life of playing it safe until it's too late to play at all. Kierkegaard chose faith in the Christian God as his ultimate leap. But the principle works regardless of your beliefs. The question is, what are you willing to live and die for? What truth feels true to you, even if you can't prove it? What passion calls to you, even if you can't guarantee success? What leap of faith are you avoiding because you're afraid of the fall? Here's what I want you to understand. Your anxiety isn't trying to stop you. It's trying to wake you up. It's pointing toward the places where growth is possible, the decisions that matter, the paths that lead to becoming who you're meant to be. Every time you feel that flutter of anxiety about something, ask yourself, is this fear trying to protect me, or is it trying to direct me? Sometimes it's protection. Anxiety about dangerous situations can keep us safe. But often, it's direction. It's your deeper self saying, this matters. This is worth the risk. Kierkegaard died young. He knew time was limited. And maybe that's why he was so insistent about not wasting it. You don't have forever to become who you're meant to be. You don't have unlimited time to pursue what matters to you. You don't have infinite opportunities to take the leaps that are calling to you. The fog isn't going to clear. The uncertainty isn't going away. The anxiety isn't disappearing. But that's okay. That's life. And it's beautiful precisely because it's uncertain. So here's the question that will define your life. How will you respond to anxiety? Will you let it paralyze you? Will you spend your days avoiding it, distracting yourself from it, pretending it doesn't exist? Or will you recognize it for what it is, a compass pointing toward what matters most? Will you learn to walk while dizzy, to act despite uncertainty, to leap despite not knowing where you'll land? Because here's the truth Kierkegaard discovered. How you respond to anxiety will determine whether you live a life of meaning or a life of regret. The choice is yours. The anxiety is inevitable. But your response, that's where your power lies. That's where your life begins. The question isn't whether you'll feel anxious. The question is whether you'll let that anxiety guide you towards something extraordinary. So what's it going to be? Your anxiety is calling. Will you answer?